When you hear the word meteor, what do you think of? If you said giant space rocks killing off dinosaurs, then congratulations, because you are correct. But have you ever wondered where exactly that fatal asteroid struck? And more importantly, what happened in the first few minutes after it crashed into Earth? Because some new research might surprise you. Let's take a closer look. 66 million years ago, our planet had a little accident. A gigantic asteroid, roughly 7 miles or 12 kilometers wide, crashed into the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. This was a big deal. Not only did the impact trigger earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions, but it also led to the extinction of around 75% of all plant and animal species, including the dinosaurs. The only ones left standing were mammals, birds, and some reptiles, who took over the planet and got really popular. So yeah, it was kind of a big deal. But while we know that this asteroid killed most life on Earth, there's still a lot we don't know about it. For example, while we pretty much agree that it crashed in Mexico, we're still debating the exact location. Some say it hit the peninsula's northern tip, while others argue that it struck farther south. Now, this may seem like a trivial matter, but it actually matters a lot for understanding the aftermath of the impact. That's because the asteroid's impact triggered a massive tsunami, one that scientists believe was up to 100 meters tall. But if it hit the northern part of the peninsula, the water would have been pushed towards the Florida coast. If it landed in the south, then the water would have headed towards the Caribbean. And since we know that the waves hit Central America and not Florida, that means that the asteroid probably hit the southern end of the peninsula. So where exactly did it land? Well, according to recent research, it smashed into a shallow sea near the modern-day city of Chicxulub, which is pretty close to the town of Progreso, which is about 45 miles or 72 kilometers from Mérida, the capital of the Yucatan. And while that settles the debate once and for all, it raises even more questions, like what happened in the first minutes after the asteroid hit. And you won't believe the answer. The asteroid, known as the Chicxulub impactor, slammed into the shallow waters of the Yucatan Peninsula at 43,000 miles per hour or 69,000 kilometers per hour. That's about 30 times faster than a bullet and 12 times faster than NASA's Parker Solar Probe, which is currently the fastest spacecraft ever built by humans. In fact, when it smashed into the shallow water, the asteroid was moving so fast that it generated a shockwave that spread across the globe 7 times in just over 2 days. In other words, this was one powerful collision. But as soon as the asteroid made contact, things started to get freaky. Next, the water's immense pressure created a massive bubble that expanded outward at the speed of sound, which could be heard hundreds of miles away. At the same time, the seafloor shook violently, triggering earthquakes measuring between 7.5 and 8.2 on the Richter scale. And these earthquakes weren't just local. They generated seismic waves that circled the globe 3 times. As the bubble of air and steam rose rapidly, it pushed huge amounts of seawater hundreds of meters into the air. Eyewitnesses on the nearby island of Cuba reported seeing giant walls of water rushing inland, destroying everything in their path. But the tsunami wasn't done yet. It traveled across the Caribbean, crashed into the Central American coast, and then headed towards the Pacific Ocean, where it continued for thousands of miles. Meanwhile, back in the Yucatan, the asteroid had created a massive crater that was filled with molten rock and debris. But don't go thinking that this was like a normal volcanic eruption. This thing was around 100 times larger than Mount St. Helens, and 5 times bigger than the largest volcano in the world, which is Olympus Mons on Mars. And while Olympus Mons is 21 kilometers high, the asteroid impact created a crater that was 200 kilometers wide and 12 kilometers deep. That's why the asteroid is often called the Chicxulub crater. And yet, despite all this destruction, life somehow found a way to carry on. We know this because about 30 years ago, paleontologists discovered the site of an ancient river delta near the town of Tanis in North Dakota. And they uncovered dinosaur bones and teeth that showed that animals were still alive and well 2 months after the impact. But that doesn't mean that life was good. See, the asteroid had thrown so much dust into the atmosphere that it blocked out the sun, causing temperatures to plummet by as much as 25 degrees Celsius in some parts of the world. In other words, the Earth was suddenly plunged into an ice age, which sounds scary, right? Well, it was, because the average global temperature didn't return to normal for around 1,000 years. Which doesn't sound like much, but it was enough to kill off most species on the planet. Now, all this time, the asteroid's impact in Mexico had a major consequence halfway across the world. You see, when the asteroid hit, it didn't just trigger earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions on Earth, but it also triggered an outbreak of volcanoes in Antarctica. And these eruptions spewed 200 cubic kilometers of ash and gases into the atmosphere, blocking out the sun and plunging the planet into darkness. And that's not an exaggeration. Scientists used computer models to estimate how much volcanic activity occurred in Antarctica following the asteroid impact. Their conclusion: approximately 1,200 cubic kilometers of ash and gases were released, which is equivalent to nearly 15% of the total amount of sulfur dioxide emitted by Mount Pinatubo, one of the world's most dangerous volcanoes, which erupted in the Philippines in 1991. But wait, there's more. This volcanic activity didn't just block out the sun. It also caused widespread wildfires, which swept across the continent and devastated its ecosystems. And that's not all either. It also generated huge amounts of carbon dioxide, which led to ocean acidification and the formation of massive dead zones, which are areas in the ocean where almost all marine life has died. But it gets worse. All of this volcanic activity had a knock-on effect on Earth's climate, leading to a sudden increase in global temperatures, followed by a rapid ice age. It was literally hell on Earth. However, after all this destruction, life managed to find a way to not just survive, but thrive. And that's mainly because of us mammals. After the asteroid's impact, most birds and dinosaurs died off, leaving us mammals as the top predators in the oceans and on land. And we quickly took advantage of this new opportunity. For example, mammals gave birth to bigger brains and laid the foundation for the cognitive revolution, which ultimately led to the development of human civilization. In fact, many scientists believe that without the asteroid impact, we wouldn't be where we are today. So maybe we should thank it for that. The day the asteroid struck Earth was indeed a dark day in Earth's history. The destruction was catastrophic and the death toll was staggering. But life somehow found a way to not just survive, but thrive, and that's something worth celebrating. After all, if it hadn't been for that asteroid, we wouldn't be here today. Thank you for watching.